Hey, everybody. Welcome to the first episode of the Reckless Wiz Podcast. I am your host, Luis Juarez. I'm comedian, writer, and once again, podcaster. If you heard me on my old podcast, you want to check out my new one, I appreciate that. Or if you're just a fan of my comedy, you saw me at a show or you watch some of my reels online, you want to check out my podcast, thank you. I started this podcast because I like talking to creative people, and it gives me an opportunity to interview them. Majority of this show is going to be interview based. I also going to do some solo casts here and there. I call it the Reckless Wiz because I want to talk to creatives about some reckless wisdom that they've learned along the way. And this one specifically, I'm interviewing comedian and writer Chris Estrada. He's a very funny guy. He also created the TV series This Fool on Hulu. We had a great time interviewing him. It was me and my co-host, Dante Martinez. He's also a fellow comedian and good friend. We talk about a variety of topics and get an understanding of Chris and just his approach towards this business. It's a fun first episode, yeah, so enjoy it. All right, guys, I'm here with our guest today, man. We got Chris Estrada. How you doing, Chris?
I'm chilling, man. How you doing, Luis?
I'm
Dante?
I'm doing good,
What's
bro.
up?
Dante is the co-host on this show, and we really had a list of people that we wanted to have on this podcast, and you're the only one that replied, so we appreciate you being here, bro. Like, just for real, like, you're the one on the top of our list. We not just because you're a funny stand-up comedian, but also because we think that you did something really great with This Fool, and
Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
we're both fans of the show, and we were just wanted to like kind of get an idea of just like the evolution of you as a person and how that led you down through comedy and into writing a TV series and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like you started.
Thanks, man. I appreciate being here.
Yeah, Oh yeah, bro. Los Angeles, born and raised, right?
Yeah, born and raised here in LA. And yeah, it's been all my life kind of, just I've never lived anywhere else, always lived here. And then, man, I started stand-up about almost 12 years ago. Like, yeah, about 11, 12.
Okay. Yeah. So we're like kind of all
Mhm.
around the same. I think Dante started around the same, and I did too.
Yeah, I'm about 12, something like that.
2013.
Yep, I started like
yeah.
2013. That's right.
Yeah.
I started at like, I would say like September, October of 2013. That's when I started.
I remember like hearing about you through a mutual friend, Ralph Barbosa. I think this is.
Yeah.
I think he was doing something with HBO, or he might
Yeah,
have
I
been
met
in
him.
LA. I think so, something like
I met him a few years. I briefly met him. a few years ago with. The first time I met him was at the Laugh Factory here in LA. They were doing like, I was on some show. It was like Latino comics,
Yeah.
and it was like I think it was like specifically, it was like some specific showcase, and ended up meeting him there. And then I guess he was buddies with Vince Caldera, who was our mutual friend, who's another
Okay,
comic, and he was a writer on This Fool. We ended up somehow we all ended up at like Norm's, like at a diner after the show.
Yeah, that's
And
what I
then,
remember him telling me. Yeah.
Yeah, we ended up at a diner after the show, and he was a really nice guy. I remember him being a pretty sweet guy, and I think he was. I think it was like a few days before he recorded a Don't Tell set, and he was like, kind of like in town, going, "I'm gonna go to San Diego and I'm gonna record a Don't Tell." And I said, "Oh, that's awesome," And then I think I met him like maybe a few other times after that, but always a nice, cordial dude,
Yeah, he actually, because at that time in his career, but this is before basically he became a superstar or whatever, me, him, and Dante, and this other friend of ours named Jesus, we would all get together all the time and write and
Yeah,
make little sketches and stuff. And I remember
That's
him
dope.
telling me specifically about going to Norm's, and he's like, "Man, I met this dude." He's like, this fool was like, he goes, he's hood as fuck. This fool's like a brainiac, is what he told me.
that's funny.
And he was
That's
talking about
funny.
you specifically, bro. He
Yeah,
had mentioned something about
yeah.
maybe you like working like on a show or something, and I
Yeah.
just was like, man. And then when it all came out, I was like, that's that fool he was talking about. Like that's
Oh, that's
and
funny.
it's just kind of crazy.
Yeah, that's right. Because he was, it was like a day or two before he was going to like, I think he mentioned not having a place to stay in San Diego, or like he was going to like figure it out or something, It was like, like one of those things that happened. Yeah, it was a trip. And then I think one time after that we like saw each other, hung out. Yeah, really nice guy.
Yeah.
So how hood do you feel like you are?
Man, I don't know. I just feel like
What does that even mean? Right? How poor
yeah,
were
well,
you? I guess is the real
yeah,
question.
yeah.
How broke were you growing up, right?
Yeah, I mean, like I felt pretty broke, you know, like I felt like I was coming up, I was just like, damn, my mom's a janitor, you know, single mom. Like I go like,
Yeah, yeah.
you know, I went to a fucked up high school, like, you know, I feel like I don't know, I feel like I grew up. That's the thing that I feel the way that I grew up is really indicative of how a lot of people grow up, you know, like in this country, like whether what race you are, you're like working class. And, you know, I felt like I always feel this, like sometimes you bond with people more so on how they grew up than even if they're your same like ethnicity, you know? Like I can meet like this Mexican dude from Mexico City or from here who grew up very rich, and I might not have something in common with him, you know? But if I meet like a white boy or some Arab guy who's like grew up the same way I did, like his parents had working class jobs, he grew up broke and working class, like sometimes I feel connected to that more, you know?
I would say I definitely related to growing up when it was like I'd be out doing some wild shit as a kid, and it'd be like the other kids that I was like, oh, you don't have adults supervising your shit at all either, right? You're like,
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. I grew up a latchkey kid. I mean,
yeah.
I definitely grew up a latchkey kid. But I feel like that's what I relate to. I mean, I feel like I feel like I relate a lot to people. I mean, it's always like if they happen to be Latino, you know, and they grew up the way I do, there's both, right? There's that culture, and then there's that kind of economic, like, yo, we feel each other on that sense, you know, like we grew up working class. But really, like, I don't know, I've met people from other races who grew up broke too. And sometimes I'll relate to them more than somebody who's of my similar ethnicity or race. And maybe they grew up middle class or upper middle class or like rich, you know?
You think that that's what class consciousness is like having an understanding at least of like,
Yeah.
we
That's
was
what I
broke,
think it
or
is.
maybe we were eating,
Yeah.
we were eating beans and rice, and maybe they were eating cooking whatever macaroni
So,
and cheese. I don't know, whatever poor white people I guess eat. I don't know, like.
yeah, whatever they fucking eat. Yeah, but yeah, I think that's what it is. United broke motherfuckers, you know. If that's probably what I think class consciousness is, you know. Like, but yeah, I mean, I feel like on a hood on a real like scale of hoodness, I don't know. I feel like it's funny because I feel hood, but like also I was never a gang member, you know. Some fools who's like
Right.
banged would probably be like, hey dog, I'm more hood than you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. I
But
guess
I
you could
feel
classify on a scale of how many gunshots per night
yeah,
in
how many
your
like yeah, how many ghetto birds you heard, how many
Yeah.
gunshots, like shit like that.
There's also people that grow up in the hood that kind of grow up rich and already kind
Yeah.
of have like a different type of mentality, you know?
Well, you know what's funny? I always think about this too, though. Like, there's like levels, you know, it's all a spectrum, right? Like, some motherfuckers grow up really working class. Like, you know, I always joke that there's a difference between being poor and broke. Like, like poor people live on the streets and broke people live in homes. Like, you know, but
That was,
like, but I feel like that's a spectrum of like class, you know, of like different types of people. But even in the hood, like, I don't know how it is where you guys are from, but like out here, like to me, the kids who were in the hood but grew up with money were all the kids whose dads were jardineros.
Yeah.
Like if your dad owned the landscaping company, I was always like, damn, these are like rich hood fools, you know? Like they got workers, they pay off workers. Like I have a homie, I grew up with him. He's my best friend. This fool's dad was a jardinero, and he had a ruta, you know, you know what a ruta is, like a route.
Yeah.
And that fool, he did all the landscaping for the McDonald's in like in the Los Angeles County area. You know, his dad had money on him, you know, like so even though he had a working class job and they lived in the hood, like
Bro, I feel like
yeah.
that shit goes back because like I had this conversation like recently with my mom because like she's from like a little
Yeah.
small rancho in Mexico, right? And
Mhm.
like we used to go there so much growing up, and it's very poor down there. We started talking about even within that rancho, her family was still considered to be more well off compared to some of the people And though they
Yeah,
weren't rich, but they had a car. And like, if you have a car, even back then, it was like a huge like status symbol within that little colonia or whatever, you know?
yeah. No, that's true. It's like what you say, like about class consciousness, or it's a spectrum, you know? Like you could grow up broke, but if you have a union job and you get those union
True.
benefits, you may be broke, but you could save a little cash, like, you know.
And your teeth
all
aren't
that
as
stuff.
fucked up either. Like your
Teeth
kids
aren't as
grow up with
fucked
braces
up.
and shit, you know?
Yeah. But that, I mean, I feel like I grew up in a part of LA that was like pretty working class, you know. It was like half Latinos, half Black folks, and like, you know, it was an interesting place. Like it was like, you know, people, it was all, you know, people were broke, people were working class. Like, even though it was in LA, like that idea of like Hollywood jobs and work jobs in entertainment, like that shit felt like miles away. Like the most popular people, like people who I knew grew up in entertainment or like ended up working in it, were people who were like fools that were rappers, you know, like
always music or something, right?
Yeah, like music, or like you saw someone like on the Latino side, if you like growing up, like if there was a kid who went, there was like people who ended up playing for like the MLB, you know, like ended up playing baseball or professional soccer or stuff like that, or like Paul Pierce went to my high school, you know, so it's shit like that, and you go, oh, that fool plays for the Celtics. I mean, like shit like that, you know.
I mean, it's clearly coming up now. I mean, you basically are part of that now, that statistic, you know, and you went into the entertainment business. I mean, and you're a stand-up comedian. And I think Vince told me that he kind of grew up similar to how you grew up too.
Yeah. We grew up on different parts of LA. Like I grew up on the southern part of LA, and he grew up in like the northeast. But yeah, really similar, real similar.
What's the neighborhood called?
Where I grew up, I grew up in Inglewood and South Central, so both of those neighborhoods. And then Vince grew up over in Highland Park, Glassell Park area.
And it's still crazy though. Like even back then, like when you were growing up, it was like comedy already something you had on your mind, or is just a result of maybe all the pressure that you were receiving from life or whatever?
Nah, dude. I mean, I feel like for me, it really wasn't. I started like, because I didn't start comedy. I'm a little older. I didn't start comedy till I was like 29.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, same, dude. I was like, I always used to tell people like I was the kind of fool that I had 3 bad jobs to pay me what 1 good job would have paid me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I wasn't college educated. I didn't go to like, you know, I didn't go to I went to community college. I got kicked out for failing math. Like I had bad jobs. Like, so comedy was a part of my life as a fan. The thing about me is that I don't look at good people and go, yo, I could do that. I have to look at somebody be bad at something so I could be like, well, if that motherfucker can do it.
Yeah, I'm better than that fool.
Like say coming up, like I grew up listening to like Greg Giraldo, the comedian, or like Colin Quinn or Patrice O'Neill or Maria Bamford, or like people like that, right? Like I wouldn't look at them and be like, yo, I could do that, because they're dope.
Yeah, hell yeah.
It really took me seeing bad motherfuckers to be like, if this fool could do it, dog, I'm going to get up and do my thing then, you know? Like, I think I suck less than him. That was my...
And you get a lot of that at the first open mic you go to.
But dog, like you get a lot of
watching
that.
everybody like, hell yeah, I'm not the only
one. It's like
one.
the worst fool, too, giving you advice on how to do some shit. You're like,
yes,
wow,
dude.
really? Damn, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, but, you know, I think comedy, anything creative, really, I was just into young growing up, you know? Like, even as a kid, I started liking comic books pretty young. And then I got into like movies pretty young. And then, you know, shit like that, or like, you know, reading and like, so I was into pretty creative shit, but I don't know, dog, maybe I had like a low self-esteem, or like just the way I grew up economically, like it felt so far away and it didn't feel possible. So, I think a lot of it too, I was getting in my own way. I was getting in my way a lot. So, dog, it wasn't until like really like 29, I lost my, I used to work a nighttime job, parking cars at a hotel. And then they replaced us with like a company that like they didn't have to pay directly, you know, and they didn't have to give us like benefits or none of that shit.
That's what led to like just saying, I'm going to try stand up, or were you writing stuff before that?
I was writing stuff. Yeah. I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to be a TV writer, but I didn't know how to get in any rooms. Like it felt like writing was for college educated people, and you kind of come up through film school, and you come up that way. And I always wanted to do comedy. You know what? I always tell people this. I go, when I was 25, I dated this woman who was like, in my mind, the first really bad one I dated. Like, she was fine,
Yeah.
And when you get your first 10, you're like, dog, I'm not gonna let this go. You're too scared. So I remember I told her, I said, damn, I want to try stand-up comedy. And she was like, well, that's embarrassing. And she was so fine. She was so fine that at the time I was like, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, fuck you. Like,
Yeah, I'm just fucking with you.
yeah.
How, like,
and then,
I mean, did you fumble her because you started doing stand-up kind of thing?
what do you like fumble her? How?
Like, I mean, were you still with her after she told you that?
Dog, yeah, she was fine.
But like, if she had told you, hey, go get a job fucking doing something else, like, and maybe she had a connection to something else, would you have gone in that just to stay with her?
Dog, I was such a simp at the time that I was just like, and she was so fine that I would have said, yeah, let's do that.
She's like, maybe try improv or some shit.
Yeah. I would have let her be my life coach. That's how fine I thought she was. But, I didn't do stand-up, and I wanted to. And then I thought, well, all right, I feel like I don't know if I can do stand-up, but I was like, I want to write, And then I started I was like, how do I do that? Like, I didn't go to film school, but I had an understanding of like film and TV. And like, I was like, in my mind, I felt like I had good taste, and I was like, damn, how do I was like, all right, I bet you having good taste helps. Cause then you know what you don't like, you have an opinion on things. You go, I know what I like and why I like it. And I know what I don't like. Like I always say, I get a lot of like, being a hater sometimes like is good for me because I can form an opinion on something I don't like, and why I don't like it. So I remember I was like, yo, like I'm going to go buy books. And I bought a book on like TV writing, and I started watching TV in a more analytical way. Like I was like, all right, this is a cold open. This is a 3-act structure. This is what like an act break looks like. This is what a tag looks like. And shit like that. And I just started writing scripts. But not knowing what to do with them. I was just like I don't know anyone in this shit.
Is this full like the first writer's room you were in properly? Like
yeah, officially, yeah. Officially, yeah.
Did you like come back to some of the old stuff you wrote and be like, hey, what about this? Y'all are feeling this? Or like some of those
a little
old
bit.
scripts?
I mean, like I think I had written a version of that show years before on my own called Out of Step. And I was just like, so it was a version of that a little bit, but I was just like, kind of like trying to learn in obscurity, I was just like, cause literally I worked in demolition. So I worked in demolition, and I had a bunch of really bad jobs. I just do those jobs and then go work somewhere else. And then on my free time, I would like watch TV and like outline scripts, like outline a TV show.
Jobs like those are good for, I think, stuff like wanting to get into writing or stand-up because it's so physical that you're not really exhausting yourself mentally, so you can put that time into that. I also like the idea of you like talking about having self-esteem issues, but also being very confident in your opinions about other things. So that means a part of you has a lot of self-esteem, but it's just it's an inner type of thing. I don't know, which is important to have if you're writing, because writing is basically just your thoughts on paper kind of thing,
But that's part of being a loser. part of being a loser is not having shit in your life, but having opinions about shit. That's part of being a loser. That's like yeah.
It's like being at the bus stop and be like, that car's fucking ugly. Like,
look at this fool bust that ass out of his car. Like I always tell people, like there's always been a hypocrisy to my misery, because like, and that's how I look at it when I was like, I would have opinions on things, but I wouldn't do shit. Like I go like, when I'm out and I see people having fun, I go, look at these fucking idiots having fun. Don't you know what's going on in the world? But then when I'm out, and I'm having fun and I see someone being miserable, I go, look at that fucking idiot. Don't you know how to have fun? Like, I'm just,
You never look at him and be like, he's probably right.
he's probably, no, it's always, I'm
Bro,
a
that's a
piece of
muscle.
shit.
That's a muscle you got to constantly be working on, though. Flexing. I mean, you
Yes,
know what
dog.
I'm saying? Is just got to keep it going because I feel like that's what makes some of the best writing.
But that's really, man, it's so funny. But yeah, that's to me was having, I think that helped me in a way, being a loser with a lot of opinions on shit that people were doing while I wasn't doing shit. You know, I mean, that's like,
I feel like that's the recklessness. That kind of fits the theme of this, which is if you were to offer any wisdom to somebody and it be reckless, it sounds like it would be just fucking be a loser first.
yeah, just
You
be a
know?
loser. Don't create art, ingest it, and then be like, look at this whack ass shit. This is how I would do it. Don't go to college, get a bunch of bad jobs, you know, let women fuck up your life.
Yeah.
Life experience is so important. I think that's why starting when a lot of comics that I know that start a little later in age usually kind of hit the ground running because they've already had that life experience and the world's already kind of slapped them in the face a few times.
Yeah, I think so. You know, sometimes I get down on myself and I go, man, why didn't I start when I was 20? Why didn't I start when I was 21? You know, like, but then sometimes I go, man, it is what it is. And I started when I started. And maybe that's how it was supposed to be, you know, because when I started, I think because I was such a fan of things, that's the weird thing is sometimes I meet people in stand-up or in like TV writing and they don't seem to be fans of things. Not everyone, but there is people that I meet sometimes that are like just out there doing it. Like, and I'm like, but they don't seem to be a fan of it. And I think what helped me was being a fan of stand-up comedy. Like I was already listening to so much comedy and throughout the years, you know, watching like Comedy Central Presents, the Premium Blends, HBO specials, like, and then I was already hearing podcasts. So by the time I started stand-up, I felt like I had a knowledge of like, oh, I knew what an act was. Like, I was like, oh shit, all right, I got to work on having an act. All right, like, I kind of hit the ground running because I was just like, all right, so I got to get good at 3 minutes. And then I also always thought about it in incremental goals. Because if I started and I said, damn, one day I'm going to make a TV show, I'd feel overwhelmed that I wouldn't do it. But if I thought of myself like, all right, well, how do I get good at 3 minutes? Then that's the goal. And then how do I write 5 minutes? That's another goal. All right, how do I get on these shows where I do 10 minutes? You know, like the local independent shows and stuff like that. And I felt like that was it because if I remember, you know, when you chill outside of open mics and you talk with other comedians, you hear people go, man, if I had a special, I would name it this. And I'd be like, motherfucker, we just started. I couldn't think like that because it would overwhelm me.
I mean, it is good that dream big, right? At one point in time,
yeah,
but
absolutely.
understanding work ethic is very important too. What you mentioned something about being a Greg Giraldo fan, and I used to watch that. What's that show he had that he would be like a guest on with
Tough Crowd
with Colin Quinn?
Yeah,
and
that was a big show for me.
Have you seen that part where he's like, I guess it's like him and Dennis Leary, like they're like talking shit to each other.
Yeah,
and he's all like this. He's like, this guy's backstage like writing jokes like before the show, and he's like, yeah, that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to like prep for it type thing. And he like kind of takes a shot at him. He's like, I can't really fully remember what he says, but I think
he says something along the lines of, he's like, well, maybe if he's like, we're comedy writers, maybe if you had written something, your show wouldn't be canceled or shit like that. I was like,
yeah. And it's also had a lot to say because, you know, Dennis Leary had an old history of like stealing jokes. Like there was a history of him stealing like Bill Hicks jokes. And like, so it felt like, you know, he was saying a lot more than you know what I mean? Like he was alluding to that. I was a big fan of that dude, like Greg Giraldo. And like, so I think also like starting comedy, like being a fan of people was helpful. Like, and also just knowing, like hearing them talk about the road and hearing them talk about, like when I started stand-up, I knew what a feature was. Like, and I knew what an opener and like, so I don't know. I just kind of like that shit. And like, it would always trip me out when I would meet people and they weren't fans of stand-up per se. Like they liked doing it, but they weren't necessarily fans. And like, I don't know. I also heard someone say like, oh, if you want to not that I think stand-up is art, but I heard someone say, if you want to make good art, you have to ingest good art. Like you have to consume it, Or like I heard this writer one time, this novelist say, like, if you want to be a good writer, you got to read a lot. It's not about writing. It's about reading,
Yeah, definitely.
So,
having an encyclopedic knowledge of comedy is very important too, because you don't want to sound necessarily like anybody else or be writing a joke, being so confident, and then somebody did it 20 years ago kind of thing, Like,
yeah.
And I feel, at least I feel like those are hurdles. Like gaining that knowledge is also a hurdle within making your own art without trying to be too similar. Not that anything is completely original,
Yeah.
We are what we consume still. And that includes music and movies and books or whatever it is that we intake, which I'm okay with, knowing that, like that, when I like a specific person's type of comedy or what they say or what they're talking about, it is important to go back and kind of like understand that person. And then sometimes that helps even liking them even more. Like one of the jokes that you had that I really liked was talking about working in the warehouse, because I also worked in a warehouse. So we talked about people with the warehouse being funnier than just regular people, or being some of the funniest people, that.
Yeah. It's always like, I don't know. I always just try to. Well, so what's really funny, when I started stand-up, I was listening to this podcast on writing. It was this guy he was the editor for the Chicago Sun-Times, and he had a writing podcast. And on one of them, he interviewed Colin Quinn. And so he said, like, what's your advice you give to like comedians or comedy writers? And he goes, write about your life, because then no one can accuse you of stealing. And like, that was like, not that I thought anyone would steal from me, but I just thought, okay, like, I didn't know it at the time, but I go, that probably helps you build an original voice, Like, sometimes, like, when I watch comedy now, I think I see so many people do stuff about headlines that everybody sounds like a Google News.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, where I just go like, okay, like, everybody sounds like they're pulling from the same source, was just the headlines.
Yeah, I feel like stand-up had like a little like stint of being more confessional. Like it's your life, you're like everything you're talking about is from your own personal experience. But man, once clips started to become a thing, you really want to, like, I assume, like, talking about other subjects so you're not burning that part of yourself, I guess.
Yeah,
But I don't know,
maybe
this whole world is so like, I'm still learning so much, even though I've been in it for over a decade. It's just all still constantly changing and trying to figure out kind of thing.
I know. You guys remember, like, when I guess we all started around the same time, but dog, like, back when I started, it wasn't about clips. It was about having a 10-minute set on YouTube.
Yeah.
Like having your own. That, I remember that was like the big thing. That was like, yo, do you have a good tape, like, on YouTube? Like, that you can send to festivals, or you can send to bookers or whatever, whether it was like 7 minutes to 10 or whatever, but having
Were you sending DVDs back in the day? No,
just
links.
just links,
Yeah, I think by that time, 2013, it was already a link heavy thing. They're like, quit sending us tapes and stuff like that. Yeah.
Because I remember by the time like 2015 rolled around, that's when I got a tape that I was proud of. Like, I did this show in LA that was pretty popular at the time, and I was like, dope. This is what I can post this on like Reddit. I get some views on it. I can send it to people when I try to book a show or whatever, So it was, that was helpful. But then it turned, now it's like clips, and it's like followers, and which I get, I suppose.
It seems like it might be going back to like a little more long form. People are starting to get a little more burnt out, but then again, I don't really have any statistics to back that up. Maybe it's just me, how I feel about that. I like watching longer form stuff, and I'm kind of trying to switch more back to like physical type media, analog stuff,
Me too, but I always laugh. I go, that shit, it's over. Like, it's over. I'm such a pessimist about shit sometimes, where I just tell people, I would just go, dog, like, when you don't, like, when there's nothing left to make in the country, like, we're not making anything, I go, the last thing you do is you commodify yourself as a person. Like, I go,
we're there, baby.
We're there. I go, we're there. We don't make anything. So now the last, like, thing is just the the commodification of your life. So like when I see people like fucking, I don't know, it was funny because I was like telling someone like, I should do a podcast with my buddy. And he was like, yeah, we should be super personal on it. And I go, what the fuck for?
Yeah, right.
And then he goes, that's what people care about. And I go, damn, dog, they're buying our secrets now, you know?
Right. So how
Like
long
you-
till I jerk off on camera?
right? Yes, like that, all that shit. That's like,
That's like what
yeah.
supercomputers like need from us, right? So maybe the supercomputers are what's been forcing us into doing this more confessional shit. type
Yeah,
stuff, you know?
it's all algorithm shit, you know?
Bastards.
Yeah,
That's why.
it's
That's
so
why you got to
funny,
make
man.
everything up all the time. Nothing can
Yeah,
be real.
yes,
Hey, so do you really hate Morrissey?
can hate it.
I remember that
Hate it.
joke you had in the show that was like,
Yeah,
man, I fucking hate Morrissey. And they're like, well, tell your hair.
yeah.
Did you write
know,
that one?
Yeah, I wrote that one. You know, I grew up here in LA, so and I think all over the Southwest, you know, there was a time that a lot of like alternative, like Latinos who were into alternative music, like Morrissey was their shit.
Was the
And
one,
I think I
right?
was so fucking antagonistic and such a shithead about it that when I was coming up, when I was like 13 and getting into like music and shit like that, people were like, that's what we like. And I was always like, man, fuck this corny ass shit, you know? And then I was like, I like The Cure, you know?
Yeah, it's always like that. Those
Yeah.
splits, like The Cure, the fucking Morrissey.
Yeah. I was just being a shithead. Like now as I've gotten older, I go, oh yeah, it's good music. I don't know that it's for me. And I think I missed that, like, that
boat.
stage early in life where you're really like, art is the most meaningful thing, you know? And so now when I listen to it, I can listen to it objectively and be like, oh yeah, that's good. Like, it's not for me, you know, but I feel it. It's
Would
like,
you re-
I think about it like Drake. Like when I listen to, if I hear Drake on the radio, I go, hey, I get why people like this. It's not for me, but it's like, it's cool.
Would you rather fight 10 Morrisseys or the band Fugazi?
Come on, I'm a fuck up 10 Morrisseys. I'm a
One hitter
I'm a
quitter,
fuck
each
up
one
10
of
Morrisseys.
Yeah.
Yeah, dog. I'm knocking those fools out.
Slap them with a burger and shit.
Yeah.
Like-
But yeah, man.
So you were heavy like into punk, and
Yeah.
like when you were younger, do you think it was because you were more rebellious just naturally already then?
You know, it's funny. I think when I was into, that's the shit that really informed me, like, you know, politically and socially and like artistically. But I got into that shit because like, I remember when I was growing up, I was like, where I grew up, it was kind of like, you know, you either listen to your parents' music, you listen to like banda and norteñas and rancheras and like cumbias and stuff like that. Or you know, you listen to like hip hop, you know, because like half of the neighborhood was black. So that's the shit that you end up listening to. But I don't know, I just came across that shit. And like, I think what got me was like, you know, people were like, oh, that's white boy music or whatever. And, you know, culturally, maybe they were right. But like, I didn't look at it that way. I looked at it like, oh, these fools are kind of angry and I like this emotion, you know? I like this, like, I didn't look at those fools as like white boys. I looked at them as like, oh, they were angry. But then if you keep digging, you find fools that are not white boys that are making dope rock music. And you know, you get into like Rage Against the Machine, or you get into like Bad Brains or Los Crudos and shit like that. And you go, okay, this is cool because we're in this shit too, you know? And yeah, that's the shit I really felt like I got into. But you know what's so funny? I feel like I was consuming it so much that I was like not, I always tell people that I got into it so much and I got into consuming so much that I inherently wanted to make things and I wasn't making it. I was like vicariously living through them.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was letting them create, you know? And I wasn't like fully listening to the message, you know, because of like low self-esteem shit, you know? You're just like, man, I don't know that I'd be that good or whatever.
And just, I mean, consuming is maybe what you needed to do first to let your brain start to slowly develop into a more creative, outputting type of person, which is what you ended up becoming. So, I mean, maybe that worked because it worked good for you. To get back to like what we were talking about as far as like, well, because like people always talk about, or in my experience, I've met musicians and then they come around the shows and they love comedy. And I mean, I love music too. So like we always like compare the two, you know, but like we have like punk type of music, but we don't really necessarily have that. And I feel like in stand up, if you're trying to purposely be somebody who's just like an angry talking about the system and all that, it's a little more frowned upon. It's almost like to be intentionally subversive is kind of like looked down on. But if you're funny and it just happens to be subversive, cool. But like, why shouldn't we be more upfront with how we feel politically or about just the system in general? Like,
you know why I think though? Because I think funny first. And that's like, to me, I think of even though I like punk, like I don't think of comedy as like the same shit. Like to me, I think they're different art forms. And like to me, the thing about comedy is I go, and I don't give a fuck if you're trying to put a message, like it has to be funny first, you know? And that's the only way it works. You know what I mean? Like that's the only way comedy works. Like I hate nothing more than important comedy. You know? Like,
yeah.
But I like that in music because I think it's different. Because I think music is earnest. And there's a long tradition of protest in music, like folk music, like, you know, there's a long tradition of, and it's earnest, like it's coming from a good place, but like from your heart. But when comedy comes from the heart, I go, look at this corny ass motherfucker. You know?
That's true. Funny has to be the first thing that goes through, right? And if it happens to be some cool shit, subversive shit, is the best no matter what, right? It can't, I don't know.
Yep.
Like George Carlin there at the end when he was like on his way out, his last special, he was just like, it just sounded like he was just angry and mad and didn't just seem as funny.
Yeah, but I didn't think it was the funniest thing, you know? Like, I know that special, I think it's all, you're all diseased.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, I was like, damn, this was fucking angry now. But, you know, I get it. He was like an old man and he was like, probably like, fuck a punchline, you know?
Yeah,
I'm just going to go out yelling at these motherfuckers and, hey, grab it.
Dude, that's the way to go out. That's like the way to go out, I think. Like,
the history was kind of like poems or lyrical anyway, right? Because it wasn't always real punchy anyway, because it'd be like, it'd have a rhythm or something and it'd be like, or I don't know, you know,
almost like a monologue, right?
Yeah,
like
yeah,
it felt like a monologue. Yeah, I heard someone say that like, it's because Carlin didn't work it out in the clubs as much. Like he worked it out in theaters. And like, you know, I heard that. And it kind of makes sense. As much as I like them, you know. But yeah, I don't think of comedy like, I think when I see somebody trying to be profound on stage, oh dog, I just get so like,
look at this profound asshole.
Look at this fucking profound motherfucker. Shut the fuck up. I think comedy is so fucking ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's so like, but at the same time, it's like a middle ground, right? Like because at the same time, like, I don't want to see a motherfucker humping the stool either, you know?
True.
Like, hey, I don't want to see nothing but crowd work. Like, I want to see someone not take themselves seriously and have fun with it. But at the same time, like, I don't want them to be hackneyed either. Like, I want them, you know, you want to feel like there's something kind of smart up there, right? Like to me, like the best version of comedy is like me and my friends, like the guys I created this fool with, like when we said our goal was always in comedy is like, make it so dumb it's smart. That to me, it's kind of the best comedy is that like, it doesn't take itself so seriously that it actually ends up being a little subversive and smart, you know?
Man, what was it night and day after the show? Like, were you like all of a sudden selling way more tickets and
yeah?
Like, was it
I mean, I was kind of a one-nighter guy, you know? I was like, I was a one-nighter guy. I had a guy who was an agent, but not my agent. Like he would throw me gigs here and there, you know? And then when the show came out, I started getting like weekends, you know? And that was great. I mean, it was really helpful. And it was like, I felt like I got in through even though I'm a newer comic, I felt like I Indiana Jones it through the last way that comics got big. Cause you know, like, not that I'm big, cause I just do okay. But like, you know, a lot of comics, the old school way of coming up was some Ray Romano, Jerry Seinfeld shit. You have your show, you do your act, and then you get a show. And I don't know that that exists that much anymore. And I felt like I got in like that Indiana Jones door was closed. I slid through that motherfucker, man. I Vaseline myself up and I slid through it.
I think that's kind of what the reels and shit are now. If you go viral online,
Yeah.
that's the same kind of version of the show. But
Yeah.
I'm hoping that it's leaning more towards actually making shows again, even though like you don't necessarily need like a studio or like a traditional person to make it for you. You just make it yourself. Like I like that short film that you made recently.
Thanks, man. I really
with
appreciate
the fireworks.
Yeah, 5th of
And
July.
it was like cool. It was funny, and in a way, it was just kind of like, dang, like it felt it had some emotion behind it, you know, like
trying. I was like, to me, the funniest shit is when people can't express their emotions, so they do stupid shit. It's like, like, so, and like, I don't know. I just when this full in between seasons or when it got canceled, I made that short film because I was like, oh, I should just make something just for the sake of it, and then like a little palate cleanser or whatever. But yeah, when the show came out, it helped with tickets. There was like certain markets like that it really helped in. Like Texas was a big market for the show. Like, so that always helped going to Texas or places I wouldn't think, like Portland or Minneapolis or Chicago. Like there's certain places that really helped.
Man, what city shows you the most love when you go outside of Cali?
Man, probably like Texas, dude. Going to like San Antonio. Really going to San Antonio. Man, I really love that city. Going to San Antonio. Man, I'm gonna burn a bridge, but El Paso's great. There's just not a good club there. There's a club there. It's not a great club.
Yeah, but it's like, an older club it's still there, right? I think that dude.
Yeah, still there. Yeah, that dude.
Yeah, I've heard some stories. I've never been to that club, but I've heard quite a bit of stories about that place. But
yeah, man. But San Antonio, I want to say, Dallas, like Addison Improv. That place has been like really. That's one of my favorite clubs. It's great. It feels like I always look to see, like, when I go to a club, if sometimes you want to see like who was there before, and like sometimes I always see that Dave Attell's there, and I go, that's how I know that club is dope.
Yeah.
Like if
when you're
Attell's
taking
there,
a piss, is right there above the urinals, like all the pictures of who's this month or whatever.
I think that's my favorite club in all of Texas. Like as far as like just the history behind it, all the comics that have went through. And I mean, I live down the street from there, so like I just always like going there, and the staff is always cool.
Yeah, real cool club. Cap City was really Austin was really cool, and and then places like San Diego. But let me think, outside of Cali, like Portland, Chicago. Oddly enough, I went to New Jersey and like had really good shows out there.
I saw that you got something coming up in Denver at Comedy Works.
Yeah, Comedy Works. Yep, I'm gonna be at Comedy Works.
That's probably my favorite Comedy club. Works. I love that place. Wendy's really great, and just both locations.
Yeah, downtown and south locations are really good.
That's the one where they have that condo that's all badass too.
Yep,
has like the video games and shit.
Cool condo,
And to me, I think I love that club because it's the downtown location. I'm going to be at Comedy Works South, which is really good too. But I love that downtown location because Attell did Skanks for the Memories there. His album. It's a real good album. And I think Greg Giraldo did Crossing a River, his first album there too.
Yeah, something about that room. Everything just sounds so great in there. And it's like down in the basement. And it just seems like it would be really hard to get out of there if something would ever happen or something, it's just something about that feeling of being like trapped down there. I don't know, just makes the
little
comedy
trapped down there. Yeah. But you guys started in Texas, right?
Yeah, in Dallas.
Yeah, that's dope. Yeah, I feel like Texas has a long tradition of like good clubs, good stand up. Like I like the crowds out there. I think what I like about the crowds is they're there to laugh.
Yeah, the city where we came up is very club heavy, unless you just really get into like the alt scene, because alt scene, maybe it's slowly been growing like over the last maybe 10 to 15 years. But before that, it was just very much just clubs. You come up, host, feature, headline, and hoping to try to get in that way. And I feel like it kind of puts you in a box to try to be a comic like that, as opposed to somewhere like LA or New York, where if the clubs aren't fucking with you, fuck it, you're going to go do your own thing somewhere else, or you're going to go do these other alt shows that are more established,
But, That's what it was for me in LA. I came up in the middle of both. Like came up through the alt scene, but I also wanted to do clubs, you know, like I always felt like, oh, I want to do both. Like I want to know that I can do both with the same material.
Do you
That's
feel
always
like you have
cool.
to change your material much city to city, depending, or what? Have you been it's pretty much the act is the act, or?
Yeah, pretty much. I try it, you know. I feel like, you know, when you're somewhere and the only time I feel like I dig deep is when I'm somewhere and I'm like, damn, these motherfuckers are not digging me. And then I go, let me go back to some year 1, year 2 jokes that I know will hit. That happened to me.
They're never gone. Those jokes always stay with you because they're like, fuck.
You can't shake them.
So,
I don't feel great when I bring them out, but I was in South Carolina, and oh man, they were just they were looking at me like, all right, you know, and then I was like, damn, I had to dig in, dog. I was just like, I was going to year 1 jokes to like fill up time.
And was that South Carolina audience?
Yeah, it was
right?
South Carolina.
Just working and shit, like sweating.
Yeah,
it's when it starts to feel like a job for real. Like,
I know.
So when you were starting in stand-up and then you started headlining, what, like maybe 8 years in, something like that?
Yeah, around that time. Yep, like around 8.
Do you still
years in.
struggle doing time on stage now, or do you feel like, man, I got so much shit that I could do, or?
No, I feel like I still struggle. I feel like, you know, I don't know. You know what it is? I feel like I'm always like, I feel like I'm picky about material. Like I try to write a lot, but not everything I drop things because I go, this doesn't have legs. Like, at least not yet, you know? So I feel like, sometimes I'll struggle. Like sometimes I can feel it. Like I'll be like, yo, I gotta work on this a little more. Or like, you know, like it depends, you know, like on the crowd. Sometimes if they're not digging you, you blow through material, you know?
Yeah.
And like, I don't want to resort to like crowd work unless I have to, you know? Like, I don't know about you guys, but I was laughing the other day. I saw this crowd work bit reel, and I go, it's over because there was this comedian who asked this guy, what do you do for a living? And the guy had a funny answer. And then I go, okay, so now the guy's coming with a funny answer, and you're pretending like he didn't have that answer locked and loaded. And you're like, whoa, this fool just said this? And now everyone's pretending like this shit is all spontaneous.
Right.
It killed me, dude.
Yeah, the audiences are too sophisticated now. They know they see too many clips. They're like, I'm going to say this if he hits me with something, you know?
Yeah, I go, this motherfucker came locked and loaded with a funny answer. And then it killed me because the comedian was like, yo, I can't believe what he just said. And I go, no, you can believe it. He came. I go,
do you remember what the job was? Do you remember what the audience member said?
Dog, he said something. He goes, what do you do for a living? And he goes, well, from Wednesday to Saturday. And he was like laughing. And he goes, oh, this fool giving me his schedule. And then he goes, what do you do on those days? He goes, I deliver dildos and pocket pussies for Amazon. And it's like, no, you don't, dude. You're coloring that up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're coloring it up because you know this is not.
It's not a bad idea for content to just ask the audience a question and then whatever they say and then just cut the clip off right there. Like, you know, like just let them do all the work. Like, oh, this is just easier. You just become a question kind of guy, you know?
I remember I saw Judah Friedlander was like, hey, what do you do for a living? And the guy was like, I'm a lawyer. And he's like, yeah, me too. And he was like, hey, what do you do? And he was just like, yeah, I do that too.
You know what I heard? My buddy opens for Dave Attell a lot. He features for him a lot. And he told me, he goes, Dave Attell does this interesting trick for crowd work. He doesn't ask them what he does. He tells them what they look like they do.
Yeah, that's good.
Isn't that funny? So it's like, but that makes sense. That's very Dave Attell. Be like, oh, you
Two
look
steps
like,
ahead, man.
Yeah, you look like you're a garbage truck driver who can't retire because whatever, right? And then that'll get a big laugh, and then they'll ask the guy, what do you really do? And then they'll answer, and like, I don't know, I just think what a creative way, like, it's more subversive, you know?
It's also inevitable, I think, when you're doing a headlining set to do some crowd work, because I think that even if it's just like a little filler,
Mhm.
you know, you don't want to make I don't think so. You don't want to make the whole thing the crowd work, but I don't know.
Yeah. No. It's
Just
always, it's good to have it
yeah,
if it comes up. Yeah.
yeah. Like, well, but that also could be because I'm like just started doing more headlining work, and I feel like it is very much all about reps. And if I'm not getting
Yeah.
consistent headlining work, then it's like, all right, I'm just not fully confident in my act yet, you know.
Yeah. You feel rusty, like anyone would feel rusty.
Mm-hmm. But I did want to talk about
All
like
good.
going from stand up and then eventually getting into like writing scripts, and then like maybe if there's somebody out there listening, whatever advice you can impart to help them maybe like understand that world, especially not coming from that background. Like you said, like you thought it was like something somebody had to go to school for and do all this, and like that isn't necessarily the case, you know. And like like just maybe I guess your experience of going from stand up into that world.
Yeah, it's both similar and different, right? Because you, like, as a comic, you write. Like, you write even if you don't sit down to write. Like, you know, some people kind of write on stage and figure it out a little bit. Like, it's still a form of writing. Like, you know, like you kind of edit on stage, or like, and I don't know, everybody has a different way to write, but it's a little different. It's similar in that sense that, like, I think all writing is editing. You know, like you know how you edit your jokes? Like when you start something on stage and you go, that doesn't work. Let me try this. Like, that's writing, you know, like it's all going to be editing. And so I think that's similar. But I think like a lot of the difference to me is that, like, it's long form. Like, you got to think of a lot of variables, because in stand up, you're just kind of thinking about your point of view and your joke. And, you know, stand up is even a long form joke is what, 3 minutes maybe?
Yeah.
At most. Like, but, you know, it kind of all has a beginning, middle, and end, you know, like as your setup, punchline, and a tag, you know, that's like how stories are. It's like an act 1, act 2, act 3, you know? So, but it's different. I mean, like when you're in a writer's room, like you're working with like 8 other people and you're giving out ideas, and there's usually like one person or a group of people who are the head writers or the showrunners, and they're kind of guiding the tone of it. Like, you learn not to be precious. Like, you go, like, if you say an idea and they don't like it, it's okay. It's better to say something than not say nothing.
Yeah.
You know? And
were you the showrunner?
I guess that's
on
similar
that?
to one of them, yeah.
So like, when creating a show like that, you're basically creating a universe. Does like that, any of that feed into like a God complex? Like, did you feel more godly after that?
We made an episode about that. There was this episode called The Visionary, where like my character, he can't come up with a manifesto. He can't come up with basically like a thesis for what their business is going to be. But because he thinks he's a genius, but that fool can never sit down and do anything. And like, no, you don't really, you don't get a God complex. You'd be hated if you do.
No.
What you get though is, imagine you just go in there and you just start telling, you suck. You suck. Like, you know, I used to have a joke, and like Vince would probably know this, but like when somebody said a bad idea, like I always used to go with that, and then what else?
Yeah.
Like, as a joke, you know?
Yeah.
Because I wanted to be like, it's okay if you say a bad idea. We can laugh at it, you know?
I think it's because I was watching what's that guy's name? David? Is it David Simon or David Chase? The guy that made The Sopranos. They had like a little documentary about him.
Yeah, David Chase.
And they would talk about like how he would kind of just like say something, leave the room, and then they were all like kind of scared a little bit. Like,
I heard a story from Michael Imperioli. He told me when we were filming the show, I didn't really want to ask him that much about The Sopranos because he was also doing the Talking Sopranos podcast at the time. So I was like, man, leave this fool alone. He's tired about talking about that shit.
Yeah.
But I'm such a big fan of that show. But one time he did tell me, because he was a writer on it, and I asked him, I said, what was writing on that show like? He goes, it was very stressful. He goes, sometimes we would be in the writer's room, and we would be coming up with an idea for the episode, and David Chase would be on the couch, just like paralyzed, not talking to anyone, like laying down, not saying shit. And then 4 hours would pass and we thought we had an episode, and then all of a sudden he would get up and go, "That's not it."
Oh shit, we lost Luis.
Oh yeah, all good. We'll wait for him.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then he would go, "That's not it." And then I guess during those 4 hours, that fool was thinking about it while laying down on the couch, and he would come up with the whole idea.
Man, I heard that on the Gary Shandling show. He would be
I love that
the writers
show.
would have to come to his house, and he'd be in the pool on the floaty, and they would be pitching ideas on the side of his pool to him while he's just like laying in the sun and shit.
I love that. What a fucking, that's
Genius.
ridiculous. What a genius ass show, though. I love that Gary Shandling's show. But yeah, I was saying, Michael Imperioli had a story about David Chase and how hard it was to like work on that show. He told me, he goes, "Oh, writing on that show was like really fun, but it was stressful because sometimes we would be in the writer's room and this fool would like lay on the couch and just sit there paralyzed, not talk to anyone. So we just had to start." And he goes, "We would start and then 4 hours would pass and we would have what we thought was a really great episode idea with like story beats. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, this fool would, after not talking, just laying down on the couch like a fucking in a coma, he would get up and go, no, that's not it. I have it." And then he would outline the whole episode like verbally, and they would all be writing it down, and they'd be like, "Yeah, that was the better episode." What a genius, right?
It's like some genius shit right there. I mean,
genius ass shit.
I mean, was he like gangster adjacent, by the way? I wonder how gangstery that writer's room was, how mafia connected they were.
I felt like, from what he told me, is I think like a lot of it being a lot of those fools being Italian and just being from that area. It's probably like being Latino and you grew up in like a working class neighborhood, you're going to know gang members, So even if you're not one, you kind of know the world a little, even from the distance of like I always joke, I go, I don't know what it's like being in a gang, but I know what it's like being robbed by a gang. So like in a way, you know the world a little bit, Yeah.
I feel like with him too, those characters probably just constantly lived in his head, and he's just sitting there thinking it all out. I mean, it is his creation, and who else better gonna know your creation than you? Did you feel anything like that with yours?
Yeah, it was kind of weird because like a lot of it I was pulling so the guys I made that show with, they were comics. It's this guy named Matt Engelbretson, Jake Weissman, and Pat Bishop. And they used to have a show on Comedy Central called Corporate. It was a really funny show.
Yeah.
And then they hit me up and they were like, "Hey, we should work on something together." And I remember at the time thinking, "Yeah, sure, I could come up with something." And they go, No, it should be your life. It should be like influenced by your life. And I went, all right, and I came up. Part of it was like, I never worked at a gang rehabilitation center, but like I had a cousin who was a gang member. My mom was a janitor. I lived in that type of neighborhood. Like, I dated those type of women and shit like that. So a lot of that came from that. And it was a little crazy because sometimes like you felt a little crazy because people would be like, "What else from your life can we make a episode about?" Or like, "What else can we do?" Like, and you go, "Damn, dog, I don't have any more secrets to tell you."
Like, that was all 6 of my story.
Yeah. It can feel a little overwhelming to pull from your life a lot. Like, it can feel a little overwhelming, or you have to learn to like fictionalize your truth, like go, all right, like this is something that's similar, but not exactly yet.
I like the show, and like when I first met Vince, I met him through Ralph also, and then me and Vince kind of just like started talking about different stuff. And then when he told me he wrote on this fool, I was like, oh, he told me he wrote the season finale on the second season.
Yeah,
and that was a great episode, and just kind of get an idea, asking him questions and stuff like that too. Like, I think that like when it comes to like writing something like this, that like you have to kind of know what failure is before. I think at least this is what I would assume would be like the mindset that I would probably have going into something like this, is where like I've suffered so much failure or basically like bombing on stage kind of thing, and you're taking all that emotion from that feeling of bombing, and it comes out of you through your words and through your ideas, like what you say about you didn't work in a rehabilitation center, but like maybe some sort of emotions you felt maybe came out through that. This might be me we're trying to analyze it, but does any of that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. I think that rehabilitation center too came also like where I was just like, even though I didn't work at one, I was just like, I just been around people like that, you know? And I just remember like, I had a friend who was a social worker, and like, I would ask her about her life, like, what's that work like, you know? And it was always kind of interesting to me. Like, I always go, damn, if I could see myself doing that type of work, you know? And then, but a lot of that came from like, also like, it's like, the idea came from something that I felt, which was, to me, it helped with story, but I also thought there's something kind of ironic and funny about your life being a mess. And you can't fix your own life, but you're trying to help other people fix their own lives.
Yeah.
You know, that's like what codependency is. So I just thought like, you know, and it's kind of the same thing of like what I said when you're being a hater, but you don't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Like when like I ought to be like, look at this whack ass movie, but I'm like, what am I doing? I'm not doing shit. You know,
Yeah.
like it kind of came from that. Like I was like, that idea of that character was, and I felt like I had that at some point. Like sometimes like if a friend told me like, man, I'd be the first motherfucker to be like, hey, ponte las pilas, you know, like get to work. Like when I wasn't doing that shit. But I thought that was interesting. Like I thought, oh, that's an interesting character, because you could see what his work like is, his external life being, I work at this place helping these people. And then my internal life is my life as a fucking wreck. And I'm not doing shit about it.
It's like your first reaction is to like immediately dig yourself in a hole, and then kind of like realize, damn, maybe I was being unreasonable or something about this specific thing. And I think I saw it in that first episode where it felt like that with your cousin, with Luis on there. And then you're kind of like, I guess, holding him up to a certain standard, like the character on the show. I'm not sure if that's something that comes from like real life or whatever.
Yeah. It was a lot of that, like, you know, that idea of like, if, you know, it's that joke about like, if you're just a mediocre looking motherfucker, surround yourself with ugly motherfuckers so you look so you feel better about yourself, you know? And it's like that idea of like, I think that character was like, he found like, he goes, well, I feel bad about myself, but this motherfucker has less than me, so I can lord over him to feel better about myself, you know? Like, so a lot of that comes from that, like, you know, and that's just life, but that's also like a story mechanism, you know? Like, you have an internal goal and you have an external goal. And like, your external goal for that character was, how do I help these fools fix their lives? And my internal goal was like, how do I fix my life even though I don't do shit to fix it, you know?
Because that's kind of a cosmetic thing right there, by making everybody else around you kind of shit. And then they're not shit, but like, you know, like you said, less than you, kind of lifting yourself up that way. That doesn't fix what's going on inside of you. And that led to like just good stories. And
that leads to good stories. It leads to problems. Like they always say, like in a story, like how do you, like in the story, they go your first act, or in like a movie, they say like, how do you get your character to the tree? And then in the second act is, how do you get him up the tree and keep throwing rocks at him? You know, like, because that's the problem right there. It's like, keep him up there. And then finally he finds a way to get down from that tree or whatever. But like, that kind of is like the whole thing. It's like, if you find a thing like me and my buddy, we're pitching a new show, and it's about working at a warehouse, because I used to work at a warehouse. And the problem we thought was like, well, how do we make, what's the engine? And then I thought, well, what if this fool has been working at this warehouse for 17 years on the warehouse floor, and he gets promoted to floor supervisor. So now he's stuck between his homies on the floor and upper management, you know? So it's like trying to be a boss to your friends for the first time, while you're trying to improve your life.
That was my real life.
Luis floor manager.
Yeah.
When Luis was sick on a forklift, by the way.
Me too.
That was like the worst though. Like when I started to become like a lead and become a supervisor is when I started realizing how much I hate it, and it's what led me into stand up, because I feel like I lost all my friends, and then like the people above me, I didn't like them, but I was still having to like do shit for them, and they were like pressuring me. I'm like, it's just like a sandwich, you know?
That's exactly it. Yeah, that's
like,
exactly how the show came about.
Your friends at work fucking laughing, and you're on a clipboard. You're like, what are they laughing at?
Yeah. And you're kind of different now, because like the joke for me in the show is that we joke that this fool took the promotion for what he thought was $1,000 more a check, but it turns out it's only $600 a year more after taxes.
Yeah.
So this fool ruined his life for what he could have done in a weekend of Uber.
Yeah.
You know, so that idea is that like, how do you put these characters in a place where life is tough for them? Because like, if you're a lead, improving your life means not being with your friends anymore.
Yeah.
and not being with your friends means you're not improving your life. So you're stuck right in that middle.
I could see that being a lot of like stuff that can come out of that, because you also, there's like, you used to be like the people below you, and there's like a redemption thing to that, like you're trying to gain their trust back, because if you were, and maybe it could be like an episode where you do go back or something, and then you realize it's not even the same anymore, and then you just try and then now you're just trying to get back to what the middle purgatory is or whatever kind of thing.
Yeah That's why we even call the show Forklift, like, because it's all about like you just carry heavy shit in life, you know. Like,
it's not about the come up, it's about the carrying.
It's about the carrying. I
remember when I got promoted at a job, because I've always been in the service industry, and I was like, damn, does this mean I can't get drunk at work all the time? Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, that's what it sort of means, is that shit is like, you lose things when you rise,
like
when you're trying to improve your life.
I feel like maybe that could be something similar in stand-up too, because I'm trying to like transition more into like trying to do more writing stuff, and I'm even working on a project with Vince, and I'm realizing that's kind of what I was doing at the warehouse, where like the thing I was trying to get to was stand-up, but I stayed at the warehouse until I couldn't. Now it's like doing stand-up until eventually I wanted to just get into writing, but I feel like stand-up is always one of those things that's always there, no matter what. Like it's like the best type of home base to have, you know?
Yeah. You know what's funny? I feel like that's why when I started stand-up, somebody said, oh, that's good, because they knew I wanted to be a writer. And they said, oh, you know, if you're good at story and you're good at jokes, that makes you valuable in a writer's room. Because like, you know, some people are only good at story and some people are only good at jokes. But if you could kind of figure out the two, like, you know, maybe a little more unique or
good,
yeah. But it's tricky, because, you know, sometimes like, man, doing the road sucks. Like, or like, you know, sometimes if you have a bad weekend, or you're just like, I think, man, maybe I should just stick to writing. But then I don't know. I like stand up so much that sometimes then you have a good weekend and you go, nah, this is a good home base. It's like, it's good to come to this. Because I also think if I wasn't doing this, I think I would still be doing stand-up. Like, you know, like, to do stand-up, I don't think you have to be a professional. Like, I don't think like, if someone has a job that isn't stand-up and they only do stand-up at night, I don't look at them as not a stand-up. Like, you know, I don't think you have to do it at a certain level. I think you can just do it.
It's a club we all kind of belong to, you know, once you start it.
Yeah.
But also where you're at in Los Angeles is a great home base to be at, to do really great shows, like at the Comedy Store, the Improv, stuff like that, and just all the other kinds of shows.
Yeah, it's helpful for sure. It's both hard and good at the same time.
But a lot of the comics over there are just so fucking funny. Like I even like at the indie show, I did the one called the Chatterbox recently. And
that's a great show. I saw you were on that. That's a great show.
Well, Steve Hernandez, I do, was really cool. And like that, just that room. And I don't know, I just felt like you had to be a little more elevated in there than you would maybe traditionally in other spots. But I don't know. The crowds are great out there in LA. I love that place.
Yeah. It feels, I like it. Sometimes it feels good when you perform in a city that feels like a little metropolitan, because you go like, oh, if they're a little savvy, if it's good. You know, you don't want them to be too smart, like too pretentious, and you don't want them to be too lowbrow. You kind of want a crowd right in the middle, right? Like where they can You want the kind of crowd that can appreciate a really good dick joke and then can also appreciate like I don't know, like a more, maybe a political joke or something, you know?
It reminds me of like, did you ever watch Louis, that show?
Yeah, I loved it.
You remember that episode where he like is on the road and I think he's like in Oklahoma City or something like that?
Yeah.
And like the feature is just outdoing him as the headliner.
Yes,
and they
I
eventually
remember
like,
that. Yeah.
like they swap them, but it's like just the difference. And I think the guy ends up, it's Jim Florentine, I think.
Jim Florentine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They just get
who I love.
fucked up.
Yeah.
And they just are getting fucked up, I think, in the condo. I don't know. That to me was like one of the most realistic type of like what it's like to do some of these road gigs, but also you feel for Louis because you do. Yeah, I mean, he's a New York comic or whatever. He has maybe a certain expectation from the audience, but when they want something that he just refuses to lower himself down to do, and I don't know. It's just like a cool way they represented it. So yeah, it's on Cancel Louis.
Yeah, just let them cancel them.
I don't even know where that show's at. I'd be looking for it sometimes just to watch it, but I can't find it.
Dude, I think they took it off. I think
it's on his website or some shit.
It's on his website. Yeah, like if you want to watch it, I think you can watch it on his. You have to buy it from his website. Yeah, but I don't know. I think, you know, bullshit aside, like his whatever he did aside, he's one of the best.
Yeah, definitely inspired me a lot at the time.
Same.
If you can catch a video of him jerking off for $5.99 on his website.
He was just like behind the times. If he just really wanted to jerk off in front of people, he missed the OnlyFans time, bro.
I know that fool could have started an OF.
He could have just been doing that, dude, this whole time.
That fool could have, been selling those things for $5, huh?
Big Red could be his handle and shit.
Man, that fool really behind the times on that one.
Yeah, he was, man.
Hey, when you quit your last job, did you give a 2 weeks notice, or were you just like, I'm out?
I gave a 2-week notice. You know what's funny? When I pitched this fool, I was working at a warehouse. So I would take like call off sick to go to like Hulu or Amazon or HBO to pitch the show. And then when I sold it, I remember when I got news that Hulu bought it, I had just got off work. And I remember I think I still held on to the job for 2 weeks more because I was like, or a few weeks more because I was like, well, I don't know. Like, I always thought, what if these fools change their mind? That's what my thought is always like, what if they change their mind, you know? So I don't think until I got a check that I was like, okay, I can quit.
And also, like,
and even
you make relations
even now,
with the people there.
What's up?
I mean, I don't know how long you worked there, but like when I quit my warehouse job, it was more of like, I love these people. I want to end on good terms with them. You know what I mean? Like I enjoyed all my coworkers and everything, you know?
Yeah, same, especially because my supervisor, like, I always joke around. I was kind of the hated one. Like I was liked, but I always like, you know, in warehouses, I feel like the people you hate the most are the temps. Yeah, the temps. And I came into that warehouse as a temp, and they were always like, man, this fool he's not in it like we are, you know?
Yeah.
So my lead, my supervisor was cool because she knew I did stand up. So she would give me like, if I needed a Friday off, I would take a Friday or whatever. And I think she didn't give a fuck because I was a temp, you know? But when I quit, I still gave them a 2-week notice because she was cool people, you know? And everybody there was cool.
Yeah. I mean, if it was a shit job, that's one of them jobs you're like, fuck it, I'm out of here kind of thing. But when the people were cool, you don't want to be a dick, like, for the sake of being a dick. I don't, or at least I don't think.
Nah, I didn't want to be. Also, I was just scared too because I was like, I don't know, what if I have to come back? You know?
It's true.
I still think like that. I always go.
I have a bit, something like that, where I talk about, like, I'm still forklift certified, you know, because uno nunca sabe, you know, might have to go back doing this shit, you know?
Yeah, for real.
You ever have dreams where you're on the forklift?
Yes, dude. I've had dreams. I recently had one where I was like back working. It wasn't even my warehouse job. It was like an old demolition job I used to have. I used to work this demolition job, and I think the reason I got it was because I was the only fool with papers. Like I was, you know, and I was the fool. Yeah, I was the fool that, like, it started making sense because I was like, oh, I'm the only one that drives.
Yeah.
I go, estos güeyes, like, nunca manejan la troca. You know, it's always me.
Yeah.
So I went, oh, I think that's why I was hired. But, like, I I had a dream not that long ago that I was back at that job, like tearing down drywall.
Like what the y'all do with sledgehammers and shit like that?
The
Yeah,
flexi one.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, cutting it up and then with sledgehammers and whatnot, you know.
Isn't that
'Cause
what
a lot
like
of shit you have to recycle all that shit.
isn't that what like rich people do for like stress management and shit like that? Don't they have like
Yeah, for
like they go
They
to
have
like
those rooms.
corporations, right? Like they'll just show up to a
Yeah.
corporation, set up a whole thing just so you to just start fucking doing demolition to, I guess, relieve stress.
Yeah, they have those demo rooms where like
Yeah.
you can go pay to go fuck shit up.
Dang.
Isn't that crazy? All right.
For the
Minus
people out
the
there,
edit out.
yeah, the people that are out there listening, like, what kind of advice or like wisdom do you think you could pass along? I know that sometimes hearing wisdom is harder to take, but because
Yeah.
it's a lot of lived
I don't know.
experience or something that
Yeah.
maybe you just learned in this business that maybe wasn't the most conventional, and you're just like, oh, fuck it, I did
You know
something
what
I
I
wasn't supposed to.
You know what I always tell people? I go, whatever you want to do, just try it. And if you don't like it, it's okay. At least you tried it. You know what I mean? Like I always I tell people like, when I meet people who tell me they want to try stand up, I always go, oh, you should try it. And if you don't like it, that's okay. You can be a fan of something. It's fine. Like you don't have to, like if you tried it and you don't like it, or if you did it for a few years and you feel embarrassed to quit, don't be embarrassed, dog. It's more embarrassing to stay in and do something you don't like and do it resentfully, you know? Like I always go, oh, just try it. Or like when people say, oh, I want to do something creative, but I don't want to give up my job. That's okay. Just do it on your free time. Like you don't like making a living is important, you know? Like I don't always say, oh, you're too scared to quit or something. If you have a job, to me, I don't look at any of this as you're meant to do anything. I always go, you're lucky. Like I don't care how successful someone is. I don't think it has to do with destiny or I think it has to do with surely talent, but timing and luck. Like I always think about it too. I always go, even though sometimes I wish I started earlier, I go, it only probably happened to me because I started at a certain time and I went to these mics and I went to these shows where people were creating things.
Yeah.
Like, you know, so it has to do a lot with like timing and luck. You know, very few people do I go, damn, this motherfucker was meant to do this, or I go, nah, but it's timing, luck, and talent. And I always go, if somebody wants to try something creative, I go, you should try it and just see if you like it. And if you don't like it, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with not liking the thing you thought you were going to like.
I mean, just being creative, just in general, if you feel like that's something within you just to do, if anybody is interested in either do stand up or get into writing or just art, painting. I mean, nothing is perfect, you know, until I guess maybe you're able to get better at it. Like you get better. The art necessarily is a reflection of you getting better, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. And then also sometimes being like, I don't know, like it's all about improving. So like, I don't think even as a stand-up, I bet I can be funnier. Like, you know, I'm never like, this is as funny as it's going to get. You know, I'm always like, and I'm fine with it. I'm always like, I bet I can be funnier or better at this.
I'm constantly looking back and thinking about how unfunny I was, not even, but like a year ago or 2 years ago. It's just always thinking about how funnier you are in the future of it if you're still doing it and putting in the effort until eventually, you know, you just become old and angry and just start just saying shit. Yeah.
Yeah. But I always feel like with creative stuff, I always just go, if you have free time, find something that like kind of feels you. If you feel, also people who don't feel creative, like there's people out there who just go, nah, dog, I'm not creative. I'm about making my bag and chasing money. That's cool too. Like, you know, that's okay. But I feel like if you want to be creative, just set some time aside for it. And if you don't want to make it your career, that's fine. You don't have to, you know? Like you can just enjoy making things or being creative. And if you try to make it your career, that's cool. Like go for it. Like strategize and, you know, a lot of it has to do with timing and right place and all that shit.
not being
hard
a
work,
dick,
you know.
not being a dick
Yeah,
to
not
people.
being a dick. Yeah, not being a dick to people. I think like, I don't know. Somebody was like, I was talking to someone not that long ago, and they said, oh, that person is. I said, oh, that person's really nice. I was talking about a comic, and they go, who cares? Anybody can be nice. I go, no, I've met a lot of people who are fucking assholes.
Yeah.
I go, being nice goes a long way. I go,
It does.
you know, I remember I heard a writer say one time, he goes, I would rather hire, like, it was a showrunner. He said, I would rather hire a person who is, like, if there's a genius and he's an asshole, I won't hire him. I'd rather hire the person who's not as good, but is nice, because I have to spend 8 hours with them.
It's true too.
And like, he goes, I got to spend time with them and they can get better. Like, someone with potential who's like nice speaks, it goes a long way, you know? Like, I don't know. You meet people who are fucking assholes and.
Well, maybe not necessarily, because like you can be overly nice and people take advantage of you. It's more like just trying to be kind, kind of be kind and just aware of, you know, your like how you are in these circles. Because like sometimes some of these people will fucking keep you from work just because of a reason that something is wrong with them or whatever. But just stay true to you, I guess, kind of thing.
Yeah, just don't. I guess that's that kind of thing, right? Is like, be nice, but don't be a chump about it. Yeah. You know, like, don't get taken advantage. Like, have healthy boundaries, I suppose, you know?
Yeah. Well, man, I'm going to be, and Dante's going to be with me at the Hollywood Improv next Thursday. I don't know if you're in town.
Next Thursday? Yeah, I'll be around. I'm going to be, no, wait. Sorry about that. I'll be around. Yeah, I'll roll through. I saw you're doing the lab, right?
Yeah, I've never done that room. I did the other one, but the lab it always looked really cool. And I mean, if you want to do a spot, you're more than welcome. Vince is going to be on the show too.
Yeah,
Vince,
I think I'll be able to.
Oh yeah, and Daniel. Daniel
Cabral.
Yeah, I think he's going to do a spot too.
Yeah, of course. You know Daniel. Yeah, Daniel, the Drake fan of comedy.
Yeah, bro. You know, like, in a green room with him, a Drake argument comes out, bro. Like every single time.
He's funny though, because he likes to be a heel. He knows he's being like a heel.
He does.
You know,
he does it with a lot of conviction for sure. That guy.
Yeah,
but he's a trip.
Oh, yeah, that's dope, man.
Yeah,
he's a good people. Yeah, that's dope that you guys are doing that room. I think you guys will like it. If you guys need I don't know how long you'll be in LA, but if you need like recommendations of where do I go do some shit or go eat, like, let me know.
Yeah, we'll be there Wednesday through Saturday, so hopefully maybe we're gonna try to do a few other spots and probably just go hang out maybe at the Comedy Store or something.
Yeah, hang out at the store. If you can get any don't tell spots, like find out if there's any don't tell shows and like, but yeah, go hang out at the store, hang out at the Improv, like, find out what shows are going around. And
do you have anything you want to promote right now? Maybe some upcoming shows or something?
Yeah, I'm gonna be at Comedy Works next month, the 21st to the 3rd, and then I'm gonna be doing a comedy show on February 15th at the Punk Rock Museum in Las Vegas. Yeah, so people can follow me on Instagram at actress Estrada Comic.
Okay, cool. We'll put all that stuff in the show notes or in the description also, man. We appreciate it, and I guess we'll see you next week in LA.
Yeah, I'll see you guys, man. I appreciate you guys. Yeah, thank you guys.
Yeah, nice to meet you, bro. All right, bro.
You got it.
Have a good one.
You too.